The following is a special presentation of the Forest City London Music Awards.
Hi, I'm Reno Halloran, the curator of the London Music Hall of Fame, and with me is Steve Kopp, our 2020 Volunteer of the Year. We're here to celebrate the 2021 inductees into the Hall of Fame. Nominees come from a variety of places, and we get dozens of them every year. They come from our board, from our steering committee, from the public.
And that Hall of Fame committee then votes on their top 5, and in the end we came up with a list of 5 names that we feel are ones that should be inducted into the Forest City London Music Hall of Fame, and we're going to give you those names tonight. And it's quite a wide variety of musical styles as well. We have 2 bands, we have a singing cowboy. I mean, what other type of cowboy is there? True. Really?
True.
We have a folk artist who is also a world-renowned record producer. And for the first time ever, we have a violin virtuoso. Also tonight, we will be honoring our Lifetime Achievement Award winner, someone who has contributed to the London and area music scene, not as a musician, but as someone who has been a supporter and a contributor over many, many years.
Up next, we have a multi-Juno winner, Larry Mercy, who with his brothers performed often on the CKNX Barn Dance, which was hosted by our first inductee, Earl Haywood.
In 1956, when I started my career on the CKNX Barn Dance, Earl Haywood was already a star on the Barn Dance, as well as an established country music artist on RCA Records. Earl was my mentor. I was 16 years old when I started in the music business. I saw ahead of me 2 different roads I could take. On the one road, I saw musicians who drank too much, rented their accommodations, and didn't care about the business part of the music business. On the other hand, I saw Earl Haywood, a family man with his wife, Martha, their children, Pat and Grant, a lovely home and a new car. I saw this was the path to follow, and I did. The CKNX Barn Dance was on the radio from 1937 to 1963, and a traveling show from 1950. In later years, it was Earl's dream to put the Barn Dance back on the road. His dream came true with the Barn Dance shows back on the road in 1996, and his dream lives on today. There's no doubt that Earl Haywood deserves to take his honored place in the London Music Hall of Fame.
Now here's a story, and I'll tell it in rhyme, of the silly...
Earl Haywood, 1917 to 2006. Singer-songwriter, guitarist, and broadcaster, Earl Haywood is considered one of the pioneers of Canadian country music. Dubbed Canada's #1 cowboy singer, he is also regarded as one of the leading country musicians in Canadian radio. He started his radio career on CFCO in Chatham, and in 1942 relocated to station CKNX in Wingham, where he remained for the next 4 decades. As lead vocalist and musical director for the weekly series CKNX Barn Dance, Haywood was the station's highest-rated performer. In 1946, he became host of CKNX's Serenade Ranch, which ran for 7 years. Next, Haywood was tapped to headline the television musical showcase Circle 8 Ranch. In 1948, Haywood and the Serenade Ranch Gang signed to RCA Victor and released self-penned hits including the Alberta Waltz and Moonlight on the Manitoulin Island. Haywood also made 3 albums for Dominion Records, including the popular Tales of the Donnelly Feud. In all, he wrote and recorded 300 songs, including sessions for Rodeo and Banff, released under the name The Haywood Family, featuring wife Martha and children Patricia and Grant. His last recording was the 2006 CD, The Haywood Family, Canada's first family of song. Haywood was inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame in 1989. Haywood also co-founded the Wingham-based Barn Dance Museum and Entertainment Society, and with Martha, continued hosting traditional country dances throughout the 1990s.
In the dead of the night, the Donnellys came back and they rode in...
My name is Doug Dietrich, and I'm the show manager and music director for the Barn Dance Society and Entertainment Museum, an organization founded by Earl Haywood. I'm honored to be given the opportunity to speak to Earl Haywood's induction into the London Music Hall of Fame, a fitting recognition for a man who loved music and loved to entertain in any way he could. His passion for the music and for life itself came through very strongly in the stories he told and the songs he wrote and performed. Whether he was performing in Wingham at CKNX radio or TV, or touring across Canada. Earl Haywood, along with his wife and singing partner Martha, were very dedicated to the development of the barn dance. He was an important part of the original barn dance and later was instrumental in establishing the Barn Dance Society and Entertainment Museum. The new generation of shows featured some of the original performers and presented new opportunities for many other new performers. The legend of Earl Haywood and songs like his beautiful Moonlight on the Manitoulin Island should live on forever. Thanks to the London Music Hall of Fame for helping to make this possible.
Greetings, I'm Grant Haywood, son of Earl and Martha Haywood. My sister Pat, myself, and our families are honored to have Canada's #1 singing cowboy, Earl Haywood, inducted into the London Music Hall of Fame. Dad was originally from Exeter, Ontario, where him and cousin Gordy Tapp worked on the farm. In fact, Gordy sold Earl his first Martin guitar, and there's a story to go with that. While in the Army, Earl made his first performance at the London Little Theatre. He went on to record several albums and singles for RCA Victor, touring and appearing on radio and TV in the US and Canada. He became very good friends with Bill Haley from Bill Haley and the Comets, cowboy star Gene Autry, Little Jimmy Dickens, and others while touring the US. And he was also at the Grand Ole Opry when Hank Williams made his first appearance. The Haywood family also recorded for RCA and toured Canada for several years. Dad's most famous song would undoubtedly be Moonlight on the Manitoulin Island. His most popular album is Tales of the Donnelly Feud. He helped start the CCMA, and he was one of the first to be inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame. Earl spent years at CKNX Radio, and he was a star performer on Canada's largest traveling barn dance. He resurrected the barn dance in the late 90s, and he established the Barn Dance Hall of Fame. Dad is undoubtedly one of Canada's country music pioneers. We miss him dearly, but we are delighted that he will be recognized in the London Music Hall of Fame. We can't thank you enough. It is indeed an honor, and we thank everyone involved with the London Music Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Swan, and I worked with Earl Haywood when I was a staff announcer at CKNX in Wingham from 1964 to 1977, and our friendship and association continued right through until his death in 2006. You know, it's hard to use the word was with an artist like Earl because his music and his enthusiasm for country music genre is still felt today through his recordings and through the legacy of the Barn Dance Historical Society. Earl was a copywriter at CKNX, so there were occasions when we'd read a commercial that he wrote, and we read them live in those days, and then we'd play one of his recordings. I knew Earl as a colleague, as a friend, as a family man, and as an instigator. And when I say instigator, I mean that in the full spectrum of the word. He was known for his pranks, as well as for standing up for what he thought was right. And he was the instigator of the Barn Dance Historical Society that keeps the ideal of live, local music front and center in its aims. And if his dream is totally fulfilled, one day there will be a theme park. It's gratifying to see Earl remembered with this induction into the London Music Hall of Fame. We close all of the Barn Dance shows produced by the Barn Dance Historical Society over the theme of Down Yonder with Earl's words, "The show must go on."
The Forest City London Music Awards has been honoring musicians by inducting them into the London Music Hall of Fame since 2002, when the Demics became the first band artist ever to be so honored. In November 2016, we moved to this physical space here, the former National Jewelers store, and we've been open ever since. And we have a wide range of musical styles represented in the Hall of Fame, from rock to jazz, from punk to classical, from opera to, well, country. And country music is well represented here in the Hall of Fame. We have songstress Marie Bottrell inducted. We have radio and television's original cousin Clem, Gordy Tapp. 2 years ago, we inducted John P. Allen, a fiddle player, formerly played with Prairie Oyster. And of course, you can't have country music in a Hall of Fame without Canada's country gentleman, Tommy Hunter. But the one thing we've been missing in the Hall of Fame is a country band. And that gets rectified tonight with the induction of the band Plum Loco. Their music has been described as crock. Not a crock a bull, no. Crock is short for country rock. And tonight, to induct Plum Loco officially into the London Music Hall of Fame is the son of the bass player of the band, producer David Kamulski.
When I was born, I was brought home from the hospital to 39 St. David Street, which was my parents' house with a backroom studio that Plum Loco were already set up in and rehearsing. I was brought home, and the first sounds I ever heard as a human being was, Billy Hilton, Brian Pauley, John Till, and my father on bass, and grew up literally on stage, sitting on my father's amp, getting drum lessons from Billy Hilton, Gary Oatridge. I was pretty obsessed with drums at the beginning, and then, enter John Till's version of Promised Land and Hideaway, and I don't think I've ever put a guitar down since. I'm sitting here with Dad's bass and the Telecaster that BW played for, there's lots of pictures of those guys playing these instruments. John Till found this pickguard in California working with Janice and gave it to my father, and there's just such a, my origins and my father's entire history in this instrument. I'm playing it on records every day in Nashville and playing these instruments and just, changed forever by the band. I'm sure that you're going to hear all about the band's history and the really long list of musicians that came and went as well, too. Just a cast of some of the greatest influences, musicians, and friends that I've, been blessed to be exposed to and influenced by. And I'm just honored and proud that Plum Loco is being inducted into the London Music Hall of Fame. Congratulations, John and Brian. Billy and Dad are honored and proud, and all of the amazing musicians, Dave Warner, and there's just so many, to go down the list of, Mike Short, and just so many musicians came and went. I shouldn't even begin the list, and hopefully you'll get through and honor a bunch of the other musicians that were such a massive part of the Ontario music scene, as everyone came and went and stayed together and reformed and played literally till my father's last gig of his life. So again, honored to be asked to say hello and congratulate everybody tonight, and hope everybody's having an amazing time.
Plum Loco played the bar circuit across the province for more than 3 decades. The band featured some of London's most talented musicians, including Brian B.W. Pauley, Ken Kalmusky, John Till, and Chuck Grover, all of whom have been considered individually for induction into the Hall of Fame. Plum Loco was formed in 1976 and featured B.W. Pauley, lead singer and rhythm guitar, John Till, who backed Janis Joplin in the Full Tilt Boogie Band, on guitar, Ken Kalmusky, who played in Ian and Sylvia Tyson's Great Speckled Bird, on bass, Billy Hilton from the Johnny and the Canadians on drums, and Dave Warner on piano. Their music was what Pauley described as cow rock or crock, Texas-style stuff, sort of rock and country. They played most of the venues in southwestern Ontario, including Fry Fogel's, the Fire Hall, and Kelly's Boogie Parlour in London, where they always drew a crowd. Plum Loco never got around to recording an album. "We were too busy having a good time," said Pauley of the band that became one of the most popular in the province. When Ken Kalmusky died in 2005, John's son Sean became Plum Loco's bass player for the next 15 years. Billy Hilton passed away in 2009, and Plum Loco retired his position. A new permanent drummer to replace him was never hired. We had some fun, I'll tell you, said Polly, who now lives in Prince Edward Island.
Hi, I'd like to thank you all very much for this this honor that Plum Oak has been, whatever it is, it's given to us, I guess, and it's great. I didn't know they give awards for having so much fun for so many years. It's definitely appreciated. I know that there's a lot of people to thank, Whitey and Fred Smith, Jack Wingate, all the gang, Tommy Grasby. I could just go on and on. There's just so many people to thank. Fans and Mike Short, piano player who took Dave Warner's place. Carl Mathers, who played fiddle with us for quite a while. All the fine players, Kenny, of course, and John, and just great guys. We had a ball. And I would say that Billy, what can I say about Bill? We sure had ourselves a time. We raised a little bit of hell now and again, and had ourselves a few laughs, more than a few actually. To quote Bill, he said, if laughs were money, we'd make Bill Gates look like a pauper. And I know that Bill got another award with Johnny Stevens and the Canadians, and I'm wondering what Billy would say right now, or Billy would say to me, and I know this is true. So how many awards did you get, Polly? 1. I got 2, and he would never let me forget it, because that was my old bud, Bill. Dale Ann Brennan, Wayne Brown, Trevor Teed for filling in on drums when we need them. Thank you all. Thanks, London. Thanks to the Hall of Fame. How's that?
London has always had a healthy folk rock scene, thanks to Smale's Pace, Change of Pace, the Cuckoo's Nest, and of course the Home County Folk Festival. Our next honoree could have been inducted as a musician or as a Lifetime Achievement winner.
I'm Ian Davies. As someone who has been involved with the London music scene for many years, I'm so pleased to introduce one of this year's inductees to the London Music Hall of Fame, my good friend Paul Mills, whose storied career goes back to the late 60s, performing in London with the folk group The Balladeers, and for several years Paul was part of the vibrant London folk scene while doing his postgrad at Western. Eventually, he was hired as a producer by the CBC in Toronto in 1972. Over the years, Paul has produced or engineered over 200 albums by the who's who of the Canadian folk scene, including the legendary Stan Rogers. In addition to his work as a producer and performer, Paul has contributed much to the betterment of the folk community in Canada. He's one of the founders of Borealis Records and has served on the board of Folk Music Ontario, including 2 years as its president. He also served on the boards of Folk Music Canada and the Canadian Folk Music Awards. He's the past chair of the Home County Music and Art Festival here in London and was recognized with the Order of Canada in 2017. Paul and his wife Bev moved back home to London in 2014 and have both contributed greatly to the local music scene since their return.
Paul Mills is a graduate engineer, musician, musical arranger, graphic designer, and recently retired record producer engineer. He has been part of the Canadian folk music scene and recording industry for over 40 years. London's vibrant folk music scene of the 60s and early 70s shaped his musical tastes. He frequented Smale's Place and performed in folk music groups such as the Balladeers, the Windy Sprinkle, and the Paisley Giraffe. Mills chose to follow his love of music and joined CBC Radio in 1972. In 1975, he created a national folk music program called Touch the Earth, hosted by Sylvia Tyson. And this put him in the position to promote and record folk musicians across Canada. He left the CBC to open his own production company and recording studio, The Millstream. Mills has produced close to 200 albums. Albums produced or engineered by Paul have earned 6 gold records, 2 platinum records, 6 Juno nominations with 2 wins, and 5 East Coast Music Awards. He is also a founding partner of the Borealis Recording Company, an artist-friendly home for Canadian folk and roots music. An accomplished performer and songwriter, his primary instrument is guitar, but he also plays mandolin, bass, banjo, and ukulele. He plays on many of the albums he produced under the name of Curly Voice Stubbs. He has released albums as a solo artist and as part of a duet. Paul served on the boards of Folk Music Canada and the Canadian Folk Music Awards, and as president of the Ontario Council of Folk Festivals. He served on the board of the Home County Music and Art Festival for 6 years, the last 3 as chair. In 2011, Paul was awarded the Estelle Klein Award by Folk Music Ontario, an award which recognizes the work of an individual who has made significant contributions to Ontario's folk music community. More recently, in May of 2017, Paul was named as a member of the Order of Canada.
At 11, that same old man, and he's sitting there on his own. Looks at the world.
Working with Paul Mills over many years and on many projects has been a source of great pleasure for me, and lots of learning and a lot of fun. Paul Mills is very creative, a wonderful producer, a terrific musician and arranger, and the working environment he established for us was calm and supportive, and I believe we achieved better than our best because of that. Thank you, Paul, for all that you have contributed to my life.
Congratulations, Paul, on your award. You deserve it. You're our guy.
Well, I am thrilled beyond words at receiving this wonderful, wonderful recognition, this wonderful honor. And it's particularly special to me because it's coming from my hometown of London, Ontario. Yes, this is where I grew up. This is where I did all my schooling, culminating in getting a master's degree in chemical engineering in 1972. But you know, it was the wonderful music scene here in London in the 60s and early 70s that captured my heart and my imagination. And it caused me to rethink my life's path to the point where I decided to forge a career in the music business. And I am so very, very glad that I did that. It's been a wonderful run, and this recognition that I'm receiving today is a thrill. So thank you to my nominators, thank you to the jury, and I want to give a particular thank you to my life's partner, my wife Bev, without whose support none of this ever would have happened. Thank you, Bev. And thank you all. I am thrilled beyond belief.
This is a photo of Nick Panasico. Back in 2018, he was honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award, as was the late Saul HOF. And both of these gentlemen have a connection to our next Hall of Fame inductee. You see, back in 1964, Nick promoted his first ever concert. It was held at the old London Arena, and it starred Motown's The Supremes. And the opening act that night was the Johnny Stevens Sextet. They were a local R&B outfit that played local dances and shows in and around London. Shortly after their performance at the London Arena, Saul HOF, who was managing Johnny Cash at the time, approached them and signed on as their manager. One of the things that made the band unique was their lead singer, Johnny Stevens. The transplanted Maritimer was one of the first black men to front a band in the rock and roll era in Canada. To induct Johnny and the Canadians, our first garage band of the 1960s, into the Forest City London Music Hall of Fame, here is former radio personality, car enthusiast, and a pretty good musician in his own right, Jim Chapman.
For the past few months, I've been writing a book about the London music scene in the 1960s, the teen scene, that is. And with your permission, I'd like to read a couple of short excerpts from that book. Way back in the early 60s, I went to a dance called the HOF, emceed by Dick Williams, the tall one. He announced that next week's band would be a brand new one, the Johnny Stevens Sextet. The girl beside me thought that was hilarious, the sextet. But when I went back the following week, what I saw was not hilarious, it was marvelous. Johnny Stevens was a human dynamo on stage who had an energetic but very graceful style, a powerful voice that was both raw and polished, and a definite knack for charming and winning over an audience. This was an entertainer. The 6 guys providing the music were a revelation too. I later discovered they were among the best of the best London had to offer, and they played up a storm that night. Ken Goff on guitar, Rennie Strasser on bass, Lou Crockett on organ, Joe Dangler on piano, Dave Atwood on sax, and Billy Hilton on drums. These were top players at the top of their game, and it showed. The group performed just about every dance venue in southern Ontario, and young musicians like I became scrambled to see them every chance we got. There was just so much to learn from the old pros. It was no surprise to us when Columbia Records came calling, though it was when they changed the band's name to Johnny and the Canadians. But sadly, a recording career was not to be. Time passed, families grew, and eventually the boys hung 'em up and went their separate ways, leaving a music legacy in this city that deserves to be remembered and celebrated. I have to say I'm very pleased and grateful to have been asked to be part of this induction ceremony, honoring the outstanding achievements of a band that had such a personal impact on my career and those of so many of my peers. The Johnny Stevens Sextet, Johnny and the Canadians, and through them all the other superlative London bands from the 60s who helped make this city such a wonderful place to be a teen and who set the stage for a vibrant and creative London music scene that continues to this day. Congratulations, Johnny and the Canadians.
The Johnny Stevens Sextet grew out of several local bands. Johnny Stevens, the band's charismatic, talented lead singer, hailed from Nova Scotia, the sole black member of this R&B-styled outfit. The band was rounded out by bassist Renee Strasser, drummer Billy Hilton, lead guitarist Ken Goff, organist Lou Crockett, piano player Joe Dangler, and sax player David Atwood. They drew influence from late-hour broadcasts on WLAC out of Nashville and trips to the Brass Rail to watch Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. They played area dances and rock shows, including acting as opening band for the Dave Clark Five and the Supremes in London. As their popularity grew, they signed with Saul HOF, who notably managed Johnny Cash. HOF made arrangements to have the group record their single for Columbia Records in New York City. It was at this time the group renamed themselves Johnny and the Canadians. A Million Tears Ago and Say Yeah were written by Goff and Crockett in the 60s British invasion style. Local popularity surged, and the group quit their jobs and went on the road, performing at clubs and stage shows throughout Ontario and Quebec. Johnny and the Canadians were groundbreaking. Stevens, one of the few black frontmen in Canada in the early days of rock and roll bands, helped to bring down racial barriers. They once rejected a month-long tour of Florida when the promoter suggested they needed to replace their singer because he was black. By 1967, the group folded, and the various members returned home to disperse to other lives and bands, including the locally popular Plum Loco.
Maybe we'll fall in love.
Hello, my name is Rennie Strasser, and I was the bass player for Johnny and the Canadians. I greet you from the isolation of my country home here, and daringly maskless and with a full-blown lockdown coiffure. I would like to thank the presenters for honoring our group and also salute the other musicians who share today's induction into the London Music Hall of Fame. This certainly has been a welcome surprise. Gobsmacked, I think was the word I used when Joe Belanger from the Free Press probed my reaction. It was certainly an insight. Now, reflecting on that 60s era in the London music scene, there was a dynamic kludge of bands that went on and frequently competed, dissolved, regrouped, renamed. Most of us played for several different groups during that period. It was just the way things were. What gave our group some notoriety, I think, was our enchanting frontman, Johnny. He was black. And our 1965 Columbia record release probably put a feather in our cap too. Well, most rock bands of the era were typically 4 or 5 members. We had 7. Now, on a good day, with Kenny doubling on sax, Johnny blowing trumpet, I humbly admit we could cook us up some bad sound. Yes. Now, record sales didn't exactly go platinum. But to our band, the adventure of 3/4 of a lifetime ago certainly did. It was exciting to set up our equipment at the Columbia Studios in New York City, hoping with bubbling youthful exuberance to become the next Beatles or the Rolling Stones. But finally we decided we got to go on the road. That itch was there, and so many musicians get it, and I was thankfully able to get it and scratch it. So after a couple of adventurous years on the road, as all things must, the group folded, some returning to families and jobs, but most again migrating to new groups and in one way or another continuing to play for many decades. Now I'm saddened that 4 of the 7 of the group are now deceased, including our beloved frontman Johnny. And I feel honored to accept this award on behalf of them, as well as their surviving members, Ken Goff, Dave Atwood, and myself. Now, this award ceremony has been hobbled by a lack of personal contact as a result of the COVID dragon. But let us all carry on as we must. We salute and thank the numerous family, friends, and fans who have sent congratulations to us and our survivors. On behalf of Johnny and the Canadians, I humbly accept this award. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Stevens, Johnny Stevens' wife for 47 years of his 69 years of life. I am here to accept this induction into the London Music Hall of Fame on behalf of John. Johnny and the Canadians was a pivotal group in John's life. I want to recognize Rennie Strasser, Dave Atwood Sr., better known as Cool Seed, and Kenny Goff. And in memory, Billy Hilton, Joe Dangler, Lou Crockett, and my husband, John Stevens. John and the Canadians were known as one of the most high-energy groups of the 1960s. I have to say that one of the most exciting gigs for them in my mind was opening for the Supremes in 1965 at the London Arena. For myself, spending time talking with Diana Ross and Mary before and after the show was a highlight. John passed away nearly 14 years ago now. I know that John would be thrilled and proud of this induction. John and I met at Masonic in St. Thomas at a teen dance. John asked me to dance, and the rest is history. 6 kids, 7 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild later, and here we are now. I have to note that all the kids are like their dad. Outgoing, big smiles, characters, and accepting of all people. Despite the commitment to the band, John also managed to attend most of the kids' activities, from track, hockey, cheerleading, school band, football, etc. John was there cheering like a proud father. Thank you to the members of the London Music Hall of Fame for recognizing Johnny and the Canadians.
Thanks to the Don Wright Faculty of Music, London has a number of world-class classical musicians. But our next classical musician did not study at Western because she started when she was 2 years old. Laura St. John is a virtuoso. She has performed across the world, and here to introduce her is another virtuoso, her brother, Scott St. John.
Hello, I'm Scott St. John, and I'm delighted to be introducing my sister, Laura St. John. The two of us grew up here in London, and Laura now makes her home in New York City. My sister and I started violin here in London with an inspirational teacher, Richard Lawrence, and music was a huge part of our childhood. Performing at the London Kiwanis, usually accompanied on piano by our mom, was the beginning of an enormous amount of performing. When Laura was around 11, she impressed a Canadian music competition's adjudicator from Portugal, who invited her and her family to Europe for a concert tour. And a couple more European tours followed. What an amazing experience for two kids still in elementary school. Today, Laura is at the top of her game. She's an incredible violinist in demand as a soloist and collaborator all over the world. Laura has been bold and adventurous with her musical choices, moving easily from the classical music world to projects that include folk music and newly commissioned music from a range of composers. She has great entrepreneurial spirit, as evidenced with her own record label, and she recently started a new online concert series based in New York City. One of the recordings that Laura produced, where she and I played the Mozart Sinfonia Concertante, won a Juno Award in 2011. Laura has also become a powerful voice to many abuse survivors as she waged a long but successful campaign to receive an apology from the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia for the sexual assault by her violin teacher at age 15. Laura was named this year to the Order of Canada in recognition of her accomplishments. As her brother, I can also deviate a little bit from the official biography and say that Laura is funny and witty and enjoys playing online euchre with my daughter. Plus, she is always sending super fun Prezi boxes with unusual gifts from around the world. It's easy to see why Laura is an inspiration to my 10-year-old daughter. Laura is strong and bold. She has a gorgeous 6-foot-long iguana. She produces epic holiday cards, usually featuring her Iggy in various costumes. She embraces the touring lifestyle and speaks beautiful French, Spanish, and Russian. My family and I are very proud of Laura's success, and I congratulate her for this recognition from her hometown. And now, here's Laura.
Hi everybody, I'm Laura St. John, a violinist originally from London, Ontario, born and raised. And I want to thank the Forest City Music Hall of Fame for inducting me this year, 2021. This is certainly the first time I've been included in such a group, which includes a singing cowboy as well as many really interesting bands from my hometown and producers and singers, and really it's just an honor, so thank you very much. I have a lot of fond memories of growing up in London. Went to school at École Alexandre and took lessons from Ralph Aldridge. My first chamber music lessons were at University of Western Ontario. And basically just tobogganing in lots of interesting ravines and places that we always somehow managed to find. And performing in Aeolian Hall, Centennial Hall, various places at the university. And I don't know, it's been longer than ever that I have not been there in my lifetime because of the pandemic. I hope to get there quite soon. And in the meantime, I'd love to express my thanks from New York City, where I presently am. And here's a little bit of Bach. mention, later on when I started going back again, Joe Cool's still the best nachos in the world, and the Alibi Roadhouse. Not to be missed. Thanks, guys.
Our final presentation tonight is to announce the 2021 recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award. This award is given annually to a person who has been a supporter and a contributor to the London and area music scene, and not just for a few years, but for several decades. Tonight's winner is a manager, a mentor, and was the program director at FM 96 in the 1980s, along with being a longtime member of the Forest City London Music Awards Steering Committee. To present the Lifetime Achievement Award to the late Greg Simpson, here is radio personality and steering committee member Sky Sylvain.
I'm honored to have been selected to present Greg Simpson a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award. He was my mentor and mentor to many in the music and radio industry. He once invited me to watch him do a voice track that's a pre-recorded radio show to be broadcast at a later time for the Sunday night jazz show on London's Rock FM 96. And while voicing, he deliberately made an error in a factoid, and then in the next break he thanked a fictional caller for correcting him, all in the name of hoping to sound live. While he was music director at FM 96, that station was #1. People like Ron Zima, Bruce Williams, Craig Rockford, Heather Hiscox, Dan Walker, Eddie Matthews were on air, but people also tuned in for the music. And on his turntable in the FM 96 studios and the music library at the London Free Press office on York Street, he would listen. I saw him listening to Natalie Cole, Guns N' Roses, Chalk Circle, Andrew Cash, Northern Pikes. He'd listen to it all, and then he'd let the R-Sound computer that we were using in those days, I was at BX, he would let it populate the hour, and then he would do something that other music directors either didn't have the permission from their program director to do, or they didn't think of doing it. And that was, he would shuffle the songs in a better order, in a smoother order, for a better mix. And that was groundbreaking. He had a mind for trivia, both music and non-music. And on Tuesday nights at Kipling's, we'd have chicken wings and Trivial Pursuit, and he'd beat the pants off everybody. He liked to impart his wisdom. For example, once he said, at 3 a.m. at a deserted intersection, sometimes he'll sit through a green light and wait for it to turn green again before going, just to practice patience. He never let me live down an occasion where at Radio Western in 85 or 6, for the concert calendar, I said the name of a band playing called The Office, a very dirty name, and it aired quite a few times. He heard it and contemplated telling the CRTC, but instead he decided to let it air with no comments, and then he teased me for decades about it, including as recently as 2019. And for 2020, Greg was so excited about his new feature on Free FM, and it was so great. He was doing rock memorabilia, rock trivia, rock memories, and it was so nice to see him lit up about being on air again. And you know, we never got the chance to say goodbye and to thank Greg for taking so many of us under his wing, sharing his experience, his tips, his tricks, being a friend, and giving us great tutelage while he was around. It is such a huge loss to our city and our industry. Greg, you deserve this Lifetime Achievement Award. We miss you, and we love you.
Greg Simpson, Lifetime Achievement. Greg Simpson worked in the music industry for more than 5 decades and had an encyclopedic knowledge of music. He was a stalwart supporter of Forest City acts as a manager, mentor, and program director at FM 96 in the 1980s and early 90s. Greg was also a longtime volunteer with the Forest City London Music Awards. Simpson began his radio career at London CJOE in 1969. He then spent time in the label world at A&M Records and at music retailers including Record World and Sam the Record Man before returning to radio in 1979 as music director for FM 96. Greg was honored with Music Director of the Year awards twice at the Record Conference. During this time, Greg also taught the next generation of radio programmers at Fanshawe College. As a speaker and panelist at various music conventions, as well as at many educational institutions, Greg was always keen to pass along his wealth of knowledge and information about the music and radio industry. He became an integral part of Canadian Music Week and was their longest-running Master of Ceremonies. Simpson also served as a conference facilitator for more than 25 years. He started his own music consulting and radio promotion firm, Mindbenders Music. He worked with everyone from Thunder Mug, Kim Mitchell, and Lee Aaron to Carol Pope and Lighthouse, all from his London office. After 15 years and massive changes to the radio landscape, Greg closed the company and focused on his work with CMW. Greg volunteered at the London Music Hall of Fame, where he enthusiastically shared stories of London's musical history.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm Greg's daughter.
I'm Abby. I'm also Greg's daughter.
I'm Nikki, Greg's youngest daughter.
And we're here to give the thank you speech that we don't want to be giving because we wish that he was, able to give it, obviously. So pardon our tears and all of that, but we know how important this was to our dad, to actually all of his years of work with the Forest City London Music Awards and how much he gave to the London music scene over the years. Obviously, we grew up there. We have memories of, his days at FM 96 and the wall-to-wall records that he had, his absolute love of music and the London music scene was pretty much unparalleled as far as I could tell. Obviously we're biased, but I don't think anyone loved the London music scene as much as our dad did, truly. I don't like all of you in that room right now. No, he loved it more. So sorry. And one of the memories we were just talking about before we got on call and made ourselves cry a little bit were when we were growing up, we'd spend time with our dad, we'd go, and all we'd want to do is just maybe go to the News Depot down on Dundas, get our latest copy of Archie comics. And, it would always turn into a 3-hour trip because he'd run into everybody he knew, and it felt like he knew the entire city some days. And we know that he loved everyone in London and wanted to give back to you guys so much. And he was so happy to have been there. And then, of course, COVID made him stay inside and everybody else. And so that was too bad. And obviously, and now I'm drawing blanks on all of the names of people that he would have thanked. And this is so sad. Obviously, we thank Mario for everything. Mario Cercelli and the board and everyone at the Forest City London Music Awards. We thank Earl Taylor, who used to run Kipling's, one of his oldest best friends. Donnie Blaze, one of his oldest friends, who had a ton of clubs in London in the 70s and 80s. Fry vocals and everything. Guys, jump in, help me.
There's literally everyone he would have thanked. And
I know, Nick Panasico, Shelly Raston. Gosh, now we're just spewing names out and we're forgetting a million, and we're so sorry.
There's no way we could ever possibly say the names of everybody that meant so much to him in the London music scene. And it was especially clear to me last summer how many people reached out to me and said how much that my dad had meant to them, and how for younger musicians, how encouraging he was to their careers, and for old friends that he's had since he first moved to London, how much of a part of his life everybody was. And moving to London back in 2019, he really wanted to be close to everybody again and to be part of the music scene that had been so great to him. And it really, it would have meant the world to him to receive this award. And I wish that he were able to receive it in person.
Yeah. Don't we all?
He really deserves it. I mean, no one can deny how hard he worked and how much he put into his passion and love for what he did. So this truly means so much.
And there you have it, the Forest City London Music Awards Hall of Fame class of 2021. Musicians who've had an impact on our community and across Canada, and some of whom continue to carry the Canadian flag across the world, making us all proud.
We're standing in our special exhibit room, also called the Rolex Room, a nod to the building's former use as a jewelry store, and a place where we pay tribute to certain aspects of London's musical legacy. And right now we have an exhibit about Spartan of London, an East End factory that produces radios, stereos, and pressed vinyl records. Our tour guides are looking forward to opening up and sharing all of these exhibits with you soon, we hope.
So, we hope to invite you back here to the London Music Hall of Fame, located at 182 Dundas Street here in London, when it's safe to do so. We hope it's sooner rather than later. In the meantime, you can go on to the Forest City London Music Awards website, and you can take a look at information about all 41 inductees now into the Hall of Fame. And at the same time, you can make a small donation if you want to support Canada's only city-specific Music Hall of Fame. On behalf of the Forest City London Music Awards Board of Directors, thank you for watching our show tonight, and congratulations to all inductees into the 2021 class of the Forest City London Music Hall of Fame and our Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Greg Simpson. For Rena O'Halloran, my name is Steve Kopp. We hope to see you soon here at the London Music Hall of Fame.
Visual treasures that honor artful sounds. That's what you'll find at the London Music Hall of Fame, a downtown gem dedicated to keeping London's musical legacy alive and well.
The London Music Hall of Fame is here to celebrate the excellence of London's musical heritage and to educate Londoners about the greatness of that heritage and to make it clear to the world how important London is as a music city.
Located at 182 Dundas Street in the city's historic core, the museum lays claim to being Canada's only city-specific music hall of fame and features exhibits and artifacts showcasing more than 50 stars from the worlds of big band, classical, jazz, country, rock, pop, and punk. The hall's impressive array of London area artists includes legendary big band leader Guy Lombardo, country stars Tommy Hunter and Marie Bottrell, Indigenous activist Mary Lou Smoke, dancer Joey Hollingsworth, opera star Garnet Brooks, chaos connoisseurs the Nihilist Spasm Band, and influential roots rock star Garth Hudson from the band. Curated by music historian Rena O'Halloran, staffed by volunteers, and financed by grants, donations, and sponsors, the Hall of Fame features a performance space and bar known as the Rosewood Room, and adjoins the London Music Hall venue owned and operated by Mike Manuel and family. Opened in 2016, the London Music Hall of Fame is overseen by the not-for-profit Forest City London Music Awards. In addition to dozens of instruments, records, and photographs, the museum's artifacts include the overalls worn by London-born country star Gordy Tapp on the long-running TV variety show Hee Haw, boots worn by a member of the heavy metal band Kitty during its appearance on the Conan O'Brien show, and a classic red jacket worn by the only known female member of Guy Lombardo's Royal Canadians. The displays are augmented by rotating exhibits in the hall's Rolex Room. In addition to famous visitors like Garth Hudson, Carol Pope, and Tommy Hunter, the Hall of Fame's assortment of Kiss memorabilia, A band brought to London by local promoter Nick Panaseco sparked KISS drummer Peter Criss to reminisce about two key concerts here in 1974.
A concert that KISS did here in July 1974 with Rush opening up, and they played later in December 1974. And he remembered, this is 44 years later, Peter Criss remembered how important those two shows were to not only him, but to his band KISS. First time they played outside the US, first time they played in a concert hall. Before that, they played in bars and clubs. And they realized they were well accepted in both shows. They went really well, and they realized, you know what, we might be able to make a real career out of this. They might have made a career anyway, but 44 years later, Peter Criss was remembering how important London was to KISS's career, and I think that's just wonderful.
The hall is committed to the future as well. Operating under the umbrella of the Forest City London Music Awards, the organization promotes and supports musicians of today and tomorrow with awards, concerts, forums, and mentoring programs. And with rising stars like Shad, Lido Pimienta, and Basha Bulat blazing new trails, without doubt, this southwestern Ontario city, a city often described as conservative, but long buoyed by a strong bohemian spirit, boasts a rich musical legacy. And proof of that rests here in the London Music Hall of Fame.